A ferryman who sails between languages and cultures. It's a slightly literary way to introduce our guest today, but an apt way to introduce Lin Halbert, a Korean to English literary translator. Welcome, Sean, to Talk Room.
Thank you for having me.
How do you like that introduction?
It's very poetic, I think.
Do you like it? Yes?
Yeah, I like it.
But I bet you can do better, right?
Actually, I mean, there are a lot of metaphors for talking about translators and the process of translation, but I translate prose. And so, I mean, if you ask me to define a translator,
yes,
I'd probably say something more like we're an author's best friend.
Author's best friend?
Yeah, because we read the text closer than any other reader, even if you're like a literary academic, because we have to read every word and translate it. So we're their best friend.
In an ideal situation, I guess, right? Not always, not always, right?
Yeah, sometimes not literally. Yeah, most of the time.
So I've introduced you as a literary translator. Curious about how many books you've translated. Do you remember how many? And do you concentrate on sort of one genre?
I was trying to count them before coming here. I think it's about 11 to 12 books that I've translated. For books that I've actually published, it's 7.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to translate whatever came in, you know, whatever I was asked to translate. So that included thrillers and mysteries, or science fiction, literary fiction as well, which is kind of a broad topic. But these days I'm really into like magical realism. So. Magical
realism, what is that?
Yeah, so that's like, there's magical elements, like things that could not possibly happen, but it's treated in the book as if it's completely normal. So it's not like Harry Potter type of magical realism.
It's not fantasy,
but it's every day, but someone can do something that they couldn't do in normal life.
And you've only published then 7, I'm saying only because you've already translated 12 works, but only 7 were published. And yet I've heard that you've received some translation awards.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Can you tell us about that?
Thank you. Yeah, I received those awards when I first started translating. I had a very like Korean idea of how to debut. So I won 3 awards, the GKL Translation Award, the Korea Times Translation Award, and the Translation Institute of Korea Aspiring Translators Award.
Do they all have different criteria?
They're all very similar in that they look for 2 things. So like how well you wrote it in English, and then how faithful it is to the original text.
I imagine that's always kind of a fine line that you have to work between, right? How faithful do you want to remain to the original and stay the author's best friend? But at the same time, if you want to reach a non-Korean audience, you have to make it so that they can understand it. And that sometimes gives rise to some controversy. I remember Deborah Smith and her translation of The Vegetarian, Hangang's works, right? How do you walk that fine line?
Yeah, that's always in the back of my head when I'm translating, because while I know that most of the people who are reading my translation can't speak Korean, I know there are some people who are going to pick it up, especially if it wins an award like the Booker Prize, and they're going to compare it. And I hope most of the time that the readers, even if I did something different, they can see, okay, I understand why you did that. And so I am balancing it, but I kind of have a picture of an ideal reader who can read the text, but can also understand a lot of my thought process. But it is a bet, because not everyone agrees with me.
Right. And I imagine sometimes, depending on the works, you might have to go a little bit more creative or a little bit more literary as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 12 works that you've translated so far. How long have you been working as a translator then?
Since 2018 when I first won those awards. So it's been
Not many years, only 7 years.
Not many years. But yeah, I've been working pretty furiously trying to pump out translations.
Right. Well, walk us through your translation process, because I was even curious. When you said you translated 12, but only 7 were published, I would think that you would have to be commissioned a work that will definitely be published after you translate it. But apparently that's not the case. So how does it work? Do you select it, what you want to translate, and then you go to a publisher? Or how does it work?
So there are kind of 2 ways to do it. The hard way is to do what you said of looking for a work, and then say you like the work, you contact the publisher, the Korean publisher, and see if the rights are available. Then you apply for a grant to make a sample, and then you pitch that sample to both a literary agent who picks it up, and then also to foreign publishers. And once they pick it up, then you get a full translation. So that's the long way. Commissioned is a lot easier to do because an agent will come to you, or foreign publishers say, we want this book translated. We just need a translator. And then all you really have to do is the translation. And so a lot of those extra books, those 5 or so books that haven't been published, were actually the Korean publisher had gotten grants to do them, but they couldn't find a foreign publisher in the end. But that happens.
Okay. I heard that's translation. I mean, I think I've done a little bit of translation, not literary, but we know that translation isn't simply transferring, words from one language to another. You have to try to capture that elusive spirit of the original text as well. What's your philosophy or perspective on that as well?
So I do agree. When people say, like, you're not translating the words, but the spirit or essence of the text, I agree with that, but I also find it's like kind of vague, because like, what does that mean?
What is the spirit? Yeah.
I enjoy watching sports, and in American football they have a saying, the intangibles. So when you like judge if there's like a football player, if they're good for the NFL, they'll say, oh, they have the tangibles but not the intangibles. And I feel like it's the things you can't measure.
The tangibles would be the skill sets, the numbers, the facts and figures.
Their height, how fast they run.
Right.
But the intangibles are something, their drive to win.
Their spirit, yeah.
But I feel like and a text is the same way. It's all of the above. It's, the writing style, the words they choose, the cultural references. And the balance of those and what you find important becomes the spirit of the text, but it depends on who you're asking. So it's kind of like you're kicking the can down the road when you say that.
I know this is going to be a very difficult question, but is there a favorite book or maybe even a line from a book that you would say, oh, I really got this, and even the author was happy with it, or you look at it and you look at it with pride and you think, oh, that was a good translation? Is there an example?
Yeah, I actually brought the book. Should I read it first and then?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So this line is from Counterattacks at 30 by 손원평. 각자의 악기를 들고 서로의 음과 싸우면서 그러고 있노라면 혼자서 내 술자리 현을 튕겨 부드럽고 둔탁한 음을 내는 그 의미 없는 행위가 바로 인생이 아닌가 하는 밑도 끝도 없는 생각이 머릿속을 스치기도 했다. Perhaps that's life, plucking away at a 4-stringed instrument by yourself and making soft yet crude sounds while competing against others doing the exact same thing, all in a vain attempt to hear just a whisper of your own voice. So I really liked this line, and the editor really liked it too. When we were going through editing. They're like, oh, I love this. It was one of those times where if you read the Korean, it's pretty different. The way the sentence is structured, it's actually 2 sentences in the Korean, and there's content that was in there that I didn't include and content that I did include that wasn't in there originally. But I felt I understood what the author was saying, and I felt like it was a point in the story where it really needed to be delivered in a very impactful way. And so the way I would have written it. That's how I translated it.
That's beautiful, I think.
Thank you.
I mean, I also like to read translated works, and I find the best ones are the ones that don't feel like a translation, right?
Yeah.
And that did not feel like a translation as well. It seems like global interest in Korean literature has definitely picked up, or maybe even exploded, I'm not quite sure, ever since Hangang, really. The Man Booker Prize almost 10 years ago, and then last year's Nobel Prize, of course, in literature.
The Nobel Prize in Literature for 2024 is awarded to South Korean author Han Kang.
Are you feeling that interest as well? Getting a lot of maybe projects or commissions from overseas?
Yeah. Before, you would pitch books to foreign publishers, and they wouldn't be necessarily looking for Korean literature, but they take a look at it and they say, okay, I can do this. Now I actually have editors and agents coming to me asking, what are you reading these days? I'm looking for, some good literary horror.
So you have to come up with recommendations.
Yeah, so you have to tell them about some Korean authors, and so they're actually coming to translators now asking.
That must be very exciting for you as well. You've got a bit of more power now.
Yeah, it's a little scary too because I'm like, it's unusual territory.
Yeah. And there's so many books that are being published on a daily basis. You cannot possibly go through all of them. So what you do select and you recommend, that has potentially huge impact, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe the current scene for Korean literature translation right now?
I think it's very young. I think when you look at previous decades of Korean translation, it was kind of dominated by older white men. But the people who are interested in Korean literature right now and translating are all people in their 20s or 30s, and they have very different sensibilities. Yeah.
What about the authors who are being translated too then? Are you seeing a lot of more young authors whose works are being highlighted?
Yeah, that's another big, there was actually a recent survey about all Korean literature that's been translated into, I think it was just English that they did. But it used to be a lot of poetry and men. And now it's a lot of fiction and women. And I think there's about a 50-50 balance of women and men being translated. And it's people publishing right now contemporary literature.
That's good to hear as well. I know that you're also teaching students on translation as well. Are you seeing an increase in the number of students? What's that like?
Yeah, well, there has been a steady increase in the number of students applying to the Translation Institute. But I think also there's an increase in the talent that's coming in. There are several students who come from Cambridge or Chicago University or Harvard. And they're also from degrees and careers that I would think they wouldn't need to go into translation. Several of the students could easily have just gone straight into academia. Based on their writing, I kind of felt like you make more money as a professor than you would as a literary translator.
Right.
But I think they saw the Nobel Prize in Literature and they decided maybe that's something they want to do.
It obviously has to be a passion, I think, to follow this path, which is not, like you say, maybe the most best paying or even easy, definitely not easy, right? So when you teach these students, what do you like to stress the most?
So the thing that I think is most important for students to learn is that it's actually something you can't teach, and it's their innate writing ability. I think people are born as good writers or bad writers.
Oh no, really?
Yeah,
you can't learn it?
Yeah, I don't tell this to students though because it's very demoralizing. But the next most important thing is having good judgment. So we talked earlier about kind of making a bet in terms of if someone read this and they could both read the English and the Korean, would they agree with the decision I make? And sometimes students make creative choices, but they don't have the best judgment, and that other people would look at it and they might think it's a good try, but not the best option.
Right. Well, in our conversation, it now makes me curious to see what kind of space that you work in. And I imagine you spend long, long hours in translating those works. So we actually have footage of your workspace. So let's take a look and then continue with our conversation.
Yeah. So this is my study. This is where I spend the most time working. And this is my wife's desk. And this is my desk. And here are some of the items that are most special to me. So I get a lot of wrist pain typing all day, and so I invested in a custom mechanical keyboard. Actually, making keyboards is a hobby of mine, and so I have a whole collection of keyboards. I bought this bookcase just to keep all my keyboards. This is one of my favorite items. It's called a Stirling engine. A lot of people don't know I actually majored in physics, and this reminds me of my least favorite subject in physics, thermodynamics. So this is my cello. Her name's Hermione. If I weren't a translator, I would be either a psychologist or a cellist.
Well, I thought it would be tidy, your workspace, but not spotless.
Oh.
That's immaculate and spotless. Always like that?
No.
Let's be truthful. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I did spend the whole day cleaning the room, but if I could have it that way, I would. But my wife's a bit more messy than I am.
Oh, blame it on your wife,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Good one. The keyboard, I covet that even, yes, that looks amazing. But you said you suffer from wrist pain because you're working so long and you're typing all day. How many hours are you working per day? Do you have to sort of make sure that you work at your desk for certain hours, like a writer, I guess?
Yeah, I try to limit it. When I developed carpal tunnel in my wrist, I had been translating all day, and now I try to keep the actual translation to about 2 to 3 hours. The rest of the time I'm doing editing or other stuff. But yeah, otherwise, and like the keyboard is angled this way, so my wrists are more comfortable.
And the drawer or the pull-out sort of drawer of keyboards, very impressive. The organization was impressive too, but I love how you like to, it seems like you play around with the keys, different colors and different styles to keep it fresh for you.
Yeah. Well, I used to have very bland taste in keyboards.
White or gray or black?
Yeah, exactly. It was all black, white, or gray. And then recently I realized I need more color in my life. So I started buying more colorful things.
Okay. How many do you have? I thought about...
More than 20. I kind of don't want to count them because they are expensive, and so it's a reminder of how much money I've put into the hobby. Right.
They're not just off the rack. They're usually customizable or custom made, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I also saw some items you mentioned. There was a Seattle mug, and then you said a Stirling engine.
Yeah, Stirling engine.
Which is, I'm not familiar with. It almost looked like a fan, but then you put it on top of your mug, and then it seemed to go around. What's the significance of those two items?
So the mug, I'm from Seattle. It's a nice souvenir from my hometown. The Stirling engine, I mentioned I majored in physics,
Right.
actually. And usually engines work by using differences in heat within the engine, but that Stirling engine works by differences of heat outside of the engine.
Okay.
So if you put it on a hot mug, the air at the bottom that's in contact with the hot mug heats up and expands, and it pushes it up, and then it gets cold, and then it comes back down.
And that's why it makes
That's why it
the
spins.
engine is spinning.
Yeah.
But you also said in the video that it's your least favorite subject.
Yeah, I want to remind myself that I don't like physics is because often I wonder why I left that profession, because when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to be a physicist or an astronaut or something. but I wasn't very good at math, and thermodynamics was one of the points where I'm like, maybe this isn't for me.
Mm-hmm. I thought you kept it there as a reminder when the translation work gets tough. That's what you could have been doing. So
right.
you developed sort of new...
It's the other way around.
Right, new. But you also play the cello as well. Do you do that also when you maybe hit a wall translating, or is it, again, some form of stress relief, I guess?
When I was younger and I didn't want to do homework or I got stuck, I would pull out my cello just to spend the time. But these days it's more of a, you know, when you spend a lot of time doing translation, you want to also do other types of creative work so you can get inspiration from those places. And so music's one of those for me.
Is that why you called her Hermione?
Hermione, yeah, her Hermione.
Harry Potter fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first book I read was one of the Harry Potter books. I like to also name inanimate objects. So my vacuum at home is like Dusty or something. And so I just name all the stuff.
Do you have a name for each keyboard then?
Oh, I haven't thought of that. Maybe. But
20.
20, yeah, maybe a little too much.
So how did a Seattle physics major end up in Korea as a literary translator? Let's begin with how you first started learning Korean.
Yeah. So I learned a lot of languages growing up. Chinese because my mom's Taiwanese. And I was learning in college Japanese. But there was a girl who I had a crush on at the time, and she was Korean. And she suggested I learn Korean. And so I wanted to impress her. So I learned Korean, and now here I am.
So you were doing actually double major, Korean language or Korean literature and physics. But then you moved all the way to Korea. So it's a big step. And I'm just wondering how or what inspired you to take that big step to move all the way here?
Yeah. Well, I did do study abroad in college. And that was my first taste of what it's like to live in Korea. To be honest, I mean, aside from the fact that this is my profession now and it kind of makes sense to live in Korea if you're translating Korean literature, it's much more comfortable to live in Korea than in the US. Healthcare is not as expensive and getting places is much easier. You don't need a car for a lot of stuff, so.
But there are also many things that are unfamiliar or difficult as well. But you've been living here for how many years now?
11 years.
11 years. You mentioned before that when you are teaching as well, you almost have to have an innate skill for writing because translating, you are creating a work, right? It's an artistic expression. Have you ever thought then of writing something of your own?
Yeah, well, I think every translator has like a secret stash somewhere of their own writings, and I also have the proverbial drawer where I keep my stuff, but I think there's actually more interest recently in like translation than like if I was to publish a work, I'm not sure people would be interested in reading it, so.
Well, what is in that drawer?
Oh.
What sort of work could you be working on?
I mean, everyone starts with autobiographical stuff, and I think that you just have to get it out of your system. But like I said, I'm into magical realism and sci-fi, so.
Aside from translation, what do you think is important for more Korean writers and more Korean literature to be introduced around the world?
So there is kind of like a network of cultural references. So like, you know, academia being more interested in Korean literature and what's being published. And, you know, there's also, one thing I noticed is Korean literature, like books will do really well if someone from K-pop recommends it. But that kind of network of culture kind of helps people get introduced to it because unless someone, like you can't imagine someone not being interested in Korean literature and then typing up Korean literature, they have to be introduced from other interests.
So you think there needs to be sort of more just general interest in Korean culture for it to translate or to kind of flow to Korean?
Yeah. Like synergy between the other art forms and also academia and Korean literature.
And my final question is there anything that you would like to achieve going forward aside from maybe working on your own novel, an area or a particular aspect of your work that you want to work on?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, now that I've established myself with several different translations, I can say no more to stuff that I don't want to translate and be following my own interests. So like magical realism I talked about, and other type of literary fiction.
Well, based on our conversation today, I've gained a new appreciation for the work of literary translators, turning Korean to English to bring wonderful Korean literature to more readers around the world and giving them a new life. And so I thank Lin Halbert for his work, and thank you for appearing on Talk Room today.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.